Hello, and welcome back to another evening of shared stories. Tonight we're doing something a little different, something I've been wanting to do for a while now. We're going to tell the entire story of Steven Universe, start to finish. From the very beginning of the Gem Empire all the way through to the final episode. And I mean all of it. The wars, the secrets, the betrayals, the love stories, the heartbreak, and the healing, every bit of it. So settle in, get comfortable, pull the blankets up, close your eyes if you want to, and just let the story wash over you. We've got a long night ahead, but there's no rush. That's kind of the whole point. If you enjoy what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider subscribing down below. But for now, let's begin. So, Steven Universe. If you've never watched the show, or if you watched it years ago and the details have gotten a little fuzzy, here's what you need to know. Steven Universe is an American animated series created by a woman named Rebecca Sugar for Cartoon Network. The pilot episode premiered back in May of 2013, and the full series launched on November 4th of that same year. It ran for 5 seasons and 160 episodes, wrapping up on January 21st, 2019. But that wasn't the end. There was also a television film called Steven Universe the Movie, which came out on September 2nd, 2019, and then an epilogue limited series called Steven Universe Future, which ran for 20 episodes from December of 2019 through March 27th, 2020. Rebecca Sugar developed the show while she was working as a writer and storyboard artist on Adventure Time, which some of you might also be familiar with. When Steven Universe got greenlit for full production, she left Adventure Time to focus on it entirely. And here's a fun detail that I think is really sweet. The main character, Steven, is loosely based on Rebecca's younger brother, whose name is also Steven Sugar. He actually ended up working as a background artist on the show. Rebecca apparently kept asking her brother whether he was okay with her naming the entire series after him, and she only stopped asking when the show was officially commissioned. He was fine with it. He trusted her. The series itself is, on the surface, a show about a kid and his magical alien guardians going on adventures and protecting the world. But underneath that surface, it's one of the most emotionally complex, thematically ambitious, and honestly beautiful animated series ever made. It deals with love, identity, trauma, family, forgiveness, and what it means to grow up carrying the weight of someone else's legacy. It's also, for the record, a show where the main character's favorite food is Cookie Cat ice cream sandwiches, and he wears flip-flops basically everywhere, so it balances things out pretty well. Now, the world of Steven Universe revolves around beings called gems. And when I say gems, I don't mean gemstones in the way you'd think of a diamond ring or an amethyst necklace. In this universe, gems are a species of magical, mineral-based alien beings. They're not organic, they don't eat or sleep or age. Each gem has a gemstone somewhere on their body, and that gemstone is essentially their entire being. Everything else, their humanoid body, their appearance, their clothing, all of it is a projection of light generated by that gemstone. Think of it like a hologram, except it's solid and it can punch you. Gems come from a distant planet called Homeworld, and Homeworld is ruled by the Great Diamond Authority. These are 4 incredibly powerful gems, the most powerful in existence, and they sit at the top of a rigid caste system that governs every aspect of gem society. Their names are White Diamond, Yellow Diamond, Blue Diamond, and Pink Diamond. White Diamond is the oldest and most powerful. She's the one who originally constructed Gem Society and its obsession with perfection. She created the caste system, banned cross-gem fusions, which we'll get into later, and instilled punishments for any gem who wasn't deemed flawless. Yellow Diamond oversees military operations and colonization. She's efficient, commanding, and has very little patience for what she considers weakness. Blue Diamond handles diplomacy and emotional governance, though she herself is deeply emotional, especially when it comes to grief. And then there's Pink Diamond, the youngest, the smallest, the one everyone treated like a child. The Gem Empire expands by colonizing planets. They don't settle on them the way humans might settle new land. They hollow them out. The process involves creating what are called kindergartens, massive underground facilities where new gems are incubated inside the planet's crust. The gems essentially drain the planet of its resources and life force in order to produce more of their own kind. When they're done, the planet is a dead husk. It's brutal, and it's treated as completely normal in gem society. It's just how things are done. It's progress. Earth was supposed to be one of these colonies. It was assigned to Pink Diamond as her very first. And that decision, that one assignment, is what set the entire story of Steven Universe into motion. But we'll get to all of that. First, let me tell you about the crystal gems, because they're at the heart of everything. The crystal gems are a small group of rebel gems who broke away from Homeworld, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 years before the events of the show. They were founded by a gem who called herself Rose Quartz, and their mission was simple but radical. They wanted to protect Earth from Homeworld's colonization. They believed that the life on this planet, the animals, the plants, the humans, all of it deserved to exist. That might sound obvious to us, but in gem society, organic life was considered worthless. It was just material in the way of production. Rose Quartz led the rebellion against Homeworld's forces on Earth. The war lasted centuries, and the crystal gems won, technically. But the cost was devastating, and we'll talk about exactly how devastating a bit later. By the time the show begins, the crystal gems have been reduced to just 3 members. There's Garnet, who is calm, strong, and speaks with this quiet authority that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay, even when it definitely isn't. She's voiced by the singer, Estelle, by the way. And she's actually a fusion of 2 smaller gems named Ruby and Sapphire, who love each other so much that they prefer to exist as one being. That's what fusion is in this world. When 2 or more gems combine their forms and identities into a single, new entity. It's deeply personal. And Garnet is the living embodiment of a loving relationship. Then there's Amethyst. She's loud, messy, fun-loving, and a little bit chaotic. She was made on Earth in the prime kindergarten during the colonization, but she stayed in the ground too long and emerged smaller than she was supposed to be. She's basically the crystal gems wildcard. She eats food even though gems don't need to eat. She shapeshifts constantly. She's great. And then there's Pearl. Pearl is precise, anxious, fiercely loyal, and deeply devoted to Rose Quartz in a way that goes far beyond friendship or duty. She carries a lot of pain, and over the course of the show, we learn exactly why. Pearl is arguably the most complex character in the series, and the layers of her story unfold slowly and painfully across all 5 seasons. These 3 gems live in Beach City, a small fictional coastal town, in a house built into the side of an ancient gem temple, and living with them, as of the start of the series, is a boy named Steven Universe. Steven is half human, half gem. His mother was Rose Quartz, and his father is a human man named Greg Universe. Rose gave up her physical form to bring Steven into the world. When he was born, Rose's pink gemstone, which had been in her belly, transferred to Steven. She ceased to exist as a separate being. She's part of him now, in a very literal sense. Steven has her gem, and with it, her powers, though it takes him a long time to figure out how any of that works. At the start of the series, Steven is about 12 or 13 years old, though his half-gem physiology means he ages a little differently than a normal human kid. He's enthusiastic, empathetic, a little goofy, and endlessly optimistic. He wants more than anything to be a real crystal gem, to go on missions and help protect the world like Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl do. And slowly, episode by episode, he earns his place. He learns to summon his mother's shield. He discovers he has healing spit. He figures out how to create protective bubbles. And all the while, he's just a kid who loves cartoons and fry bits from the local boardwalk. What I think catches a lot of people off guard about Steven Universe is its scope. It starts small. It feels like a quirky, low-stakes cartoon about a kid and his alien guardians having adventures in a beach town. You watch Steven try to ride a tiny pink lion. You watch him help his dad wash cars. You watch him eat donuts at the Big Donut with his friend Lars. And then, so gradually that you almost don't notice it happening, the show starts pulling back the curtain. you start learning about the gem war, about corruption, about the diamonds, about what really happened to Steven's mother, and why Pearl can't stop crying when she thinks no one is watching. The tonal shift is so seamless that by the time you realize you're watching a show about intergalactic war crimes, ancient trauma, identity, and the long shadow of colonialism, you're already in too deep to look away. That, I think, is the genius of it. Rebecca Sugar built a show that earns its heaviness by first earning your love. You care about these characters before the show asks you to hurt for them. And by the time it does ask, you're all in. But to really understand Steven's story, to really understand what he inherits and what he has to reckon with, we need to go way, way back, thousands of years before he was born, to the very beginning of the Gem Empire, and how Earth got caught up in all of it. So let's talk about Homeworld. The Gem. Homeworld is, or was, an entire planet devoted to the production and governance of gems. At some point in the ancient past, an unknown event actually split the Homeworld planet into pieces, and the gems rebuilt their civilization across those fragments. White Diamond sits at the very top. She's essentially the origin of gem society as it exists, and she governs with an iron fist wrapped in a veneer of perfection. In White's view, every gem has a purpose, and every gem must fulfill that purpose without deviation. A ruby is a soldier. A sapphire is an aristocratic future seer. A pearl is a servant. A bismuth is a builder. You are what you were made to be, and if you're anything else, you're flawed. And flawed gems are punished, or worse. Yellow Diamond manages the Empire's military and its expansion. She's pragmatic, sometimes ruthlessly so. Blue Diamond oversees court and matters of emotion and tradition. She's softer than Yellow, but no less powerful. And Pink Diamond, the youngest of the four, was for a very long time treated as something between a little sister and a pet. The other diamonds didn't take her seriously. They didn't think she was ready for real responsibility. But Pink Diamond wanted a colony of her own. She wanted to prove that she could do what the other diamonds did. She begged and she pleaded and she threw tantrums, quite literally. Pink had a temper. We learn later in the series that her emotional outbursts were actually physically destructive, powerful enough to damage other gems. Her original Pearl, a gem who would much later be known as Volleyball, had her eye permanently damaged by one of Pink's explosive tantrums. White Diamond took that Pearl away from Pink and replaced her with a new one. Our Pearl, the Pearl we know and love from the show. Eventually, the diamonds gave in. They gave Pink Diamond the Earth to colonize. Now, Pink also had a playmate, a gem called Spinel, who was created specifically to be Pink Diamond's best friend. Spinel is one of the most tragic characters in the entire franchise, but we'll get to her story later. What matters right now is that when Pink Diamond received her colony, she told Spinel to stand very still in a garden and wait for her to come back. She told Spinel it was a game. Spinel waited for 6,000 years. Pink never came back. She just forgot about her, or chose not to think about her. And Spinel stood there in that garden, alone for millennia, not knowing she'd been abandoned. But again, we'll come back to that. So Pink Diamond arrives at Earth to begin the colonization process. She sets up a moon base to oversee operations. The prime kindergarten is established, and gems begin incubating in the Earth's crust. Pink has her Pearl by her side, and everything is moving forward as planned. But Pink Diamond is bored. Colonizing a planet turns out to be tedious, bureaucratic work, not the glorious adventure she imagined. And then something happens that changes everything. Pearl, her Pearl, suggests something. She suggests that Pink could shapeshift to look like a common quartz soldier so she could walk among the other gems without being recognized. Pink Diamond loves this idea. She shapeshifts into the form of a Rose Quartz, a type of gem from her own court, rotating her gemstone to show the bottom facet instead of the front, so it looks like a different gem entirely. And disguised as this Rose Quartz, Pink Diamond and Pearl sneak out of the moon base and explore Earth, and Pink Diamond falls in love with it. Not romantically, but genuinely, deeply falls in love with the planet. She sees the organic life, the plants, the animals, the oceans, the sheer variety and beauty of a living world. And she realizes something that changes her forever. Her colony isn't creating life, it's taking life. The kindergartens drained the planet. When they're done, nothing will be left. Every flower, every creature, every ecosystem will be gone. Pink Diamond goes back to the other diamonds and begs them to stop the colonization. She tells them Earth is special. She tells them the organic life deserves to exist. Yellow Diamond tells her to finish what she started. Blue Diamond, in what she probably considered a generous compromise, creates a human zoo, a space station where a small population of humans is preserved as specimens. Like animals in a cage, that's Homeworld's idea of compassion. Pink Diamond is devastated. She asked, and they said no. She pleaded, and they dismissed her, over and over. She felt like they didn't care about her at all. And in her mind, there was only one option left. She would become someone else. She would fight herself, or rather, the image of herself, to drive Homeworld away. This is where things get complicated, and where I think the show really starts doing something special with its storytelling. Because the story of Rose Quartz and Pink Diamond isn't a simple hero story. It's messy. It's full of decisions that make sense in the moment, but cause immeasurable harm down the line. Pink Diamond was trying to do the right thing, but the way she went about it left a trail of pain that her son would still be cleaning up thousands of years later. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Pink Diamond permanently adopted the identity of Rose Quartz. She shapeshifted into Rose's form, and as far as we know, never took her diamond form again until the very end. Pearl was the only person who knew the truth. Together, the two of them became the founding members of what they called the Crystal Gems, a rebel group devoted to protecting Earth from Homeworld. Now, a quick note about Pearl's role here, because it's important. Pearl wasn't just Rose's soldier or her companion. In Gem Society, pearls are servants. They're made to stand beside their owner, hold their things, look pretty, and never speak out of turn. Our Pearl was created to serve Pink Diamond. And when Pink Diamond became Rose Quartz, Pearl chose to follow her into rebellion. She became Rose's most loyal ally, her strategist, her protector. And as the show makes increasingly clear, the person who loved Rose more deeply and more painfully than anyone else ever would. Pearl fought in a war for thousands of years, carrying a secret she was literally forbidden from speaking. Pink Diamond, in her last act as a diamond, gave Pearl a direct command to never tell anyone the truth about who Rose Quartz really was. And because a pearl cannot disobey a diamond's command, that order held for over 5,000 years. Pearl physically could not speak about it. Every time she tried, her hands would fly to her mouth and silence her. Can you imagine that? Knowing the truth about everything, about the war, about the person you loved most, and being physically incapable of telling anyone, that's the foundation on which the crystal gems were built. A beautiful lie. But at the time, none of that mattered yet. At the time, Rose Quartz was a symbol of hope and freedom, and the rebellion she started would change everything. I think what makes this backstory work so well is that it's not clean. Pink Diamond makes choices that are understandable, even sympathetic. But those choices have consequences that ripple outward for millennia. She lied to the people who loved her. She abandoned Spinel. She ordered Pearl into silence. She let an entire civilization believe their diamond had been murdered. And she did all of it because she genuinely loved the Earth and wanted to protect it. Good intentions. Terrible execution. Consequences that lasted forever. That's kind of the whole thesis of Steven Universe, right there. So Pink Diamond couldn't convince the other diamonds to stop, and that left her with what she saw as her only option. She would start a war. The rebellion didn't start with a battle. It started with small acts, sabotage, disruptions. Rose Quartz and Pearl, working alone at first, began interfering with the colonization process. They attacked supply lines, destroyed equipment, and made themselves a nuisance to the homeworld forces stationed on Earth. At this point, nobody knew that Rose Quartz was actually Pink Diamond. To the rest of the Gem Empire, Rose was just a rogue quartz soldier causing trouble on a backwater colony. But then something happened that turned a minor rebellion into something much larger. About 5,750 years before the events of the show, Rose Quartz and Pearl launched a direct attack on Blue Diamond's court at a place called the Cloud Arena. Blue Diamond had come to Earth with a diplomatic entourage to investigate the growing rebellion. Among her court was a sapphire, an aristocratic gem with the ability to see the future, and her ruby guards. Sapphire had foreseen that the rebels would attack and that she and the ruby guards would be captured, but the rebellion would be put down. Everything was supposed to go according to plan. But when Rose and Pearl attacked, one of the ruby guards did something unexpected. She pushed Sapphire out of the way to protect her, changing the future that Sapphire had predicted. And in that moment of contact, something extraordinary happened. Ruby and Sapphire accidentally fused. Now, fusion in the world of Steven Universe is when two or more gems combine their physical forms and their identities into a new being. On Homeworld, fusion between gems of the same type is accepted. It's a tactical tool. But fusion between two different types of gems is considered an abomination. It's forbidden. It's disgusting to them. And here were Ruby and Sapphire, two completely different gems, fused together into someone entirely new. That someone was Garnet. The fusion was immediately broken apart by Blue Diamond's court, and Ruby was sentenced to be shattered for what she had done. But Rose Quartz intervened. She saved Ruby and Sapphire, and more importantly, she told them that what they had done was beautiful, that their fusion wasn't wrong, that they could be whoever they wanted to be. This moment, this single act of acceptance, is what earned Garnet's lifelong loyalty to Rose Quartz and to the crystal gems. Ruby and Sapphire joined the rebellion, and they chose to stay fused as Garnet permanently. Garnet became one of the crystal gems' most powerful fighters, and eventually their de facto leader after Rose was gone. The rebellion grew. More gems defected from Homeworld and joined Rose's cause. Among them was Bismuth, a builder gem who was tired of constructing arenas and towers for the elite and wanted to fight for something that actually mattered. Rose welcomed her warmly, and Bismuth became the crystal gem's blacksmith, forging weapons for the rebel army. Rose specifically commissioned Bismuth to create a sword for her. She wanted a sword that could destroy a gem's physical form, poofing them, but would never shatter their gemstone. In other words, a weapon that could defeat an enemy without killing them. Rose told Bismuth this was because she believed in mercy. And that was true, to an extent. But Rose also had another reason for wanting this specific sword. She had a plan for it. A very specific, very deceptive plan. Because the war wasn't going well enough. Rose was fighting as a rebel quartz, and the Diamonds saw her as a nuisance, not a real threat. As long as the Diamonds believed their colony was still viable, they would keep sending forces. Rose needed something bigger, something that would make Homeworld abandon Earth entirely. And so, she decided to shatter Pink Diamond. The plan was this. Pink Diamond and Pearl would stage a fake assassination. Pearl would shapeshift into Rose Quartz's form and approach Pink Diamond in front of her entourage. She would poof Pink Diamond with Rose's sword. But because the sword was designed to never shatter a gemstone, Pink Diamond's gem would be unharmed. Pink had already swallowed fake gem shards to make the shattering look convincing. Once poofed, Pink Diamond would simply reform as Rose Quartz permanently. To the outside world, it would look like Rose Quartz had murdered a diamond. Before they went through with it, Pink Diamond gave Pearl one final command, a direct order from a diamond which Pearl could never disobey. She told Pearl to never speak of what really happened, never tell anyone the truth. Pearl agreed. She had to. The plan worked. The fake shattering was witnessed by members of Pink Diamond's court, including a ruby soldier known as Eyeball who would later swear she saw it happen with her own eyes. The news spread across the empire. Rose Quartz had shattered Pink Diamond. A common soldier had killed a diamond. It was unprecedented, it was horrifying, and it changed everything. The reaction from the remaining diamonds was fury, pure, overwhelming fury. Pink Diamond wasn't just their colleague. She was their family, in whatever way diamonds understand family. Blue Diamond was consumed by grief that would last for thousands of years. Yellow Diamond channeled her pain into rage and a desire for revenge. And what they did next was the single most devastating event in the entire series. The Diamonds issued a full-scale evacuation of all homeworld gems from Earth. Every loyalist, every soldier, every worker was ordered to leave the planet immediately. There was a mass panic. Gems scrambled to reach ships and warp pads. In the chaos, Lapis Lazuli, a gem who had been trapped in a mirror by a homeworld soldier who mistook her for a crystal gem, was dropped on the ground. Another gem stepped on her gemstone and cracked it. She would remain trapped and damaged for the next 5,000 years. Once the evacuation was complete, or close enough, the 3 remaining diamonds combined their powers and unleashed an attack on Earth. It's referred to as the Corrupting Light. Their intention was to obliterate every gem left on the planet. They wanted to wipe out the crystal gems entirely, but the attack didn't work the way they intended. Instead of destroying the gems, it corrupted them. The Corrupting Light warped their minds and their physical forms, turning them into monstrous, incoherent creatures. Gems who had been soldiers, scholars, friends, lovers, were reduced to mindless beasts. They couldn't think clearly. They couldn't remember who they were. When they reformed, they came back as monsters. The Corrupting Light was a combination of the 3 diamonds' unique powers. White Diamond's power corrupts the mind. Yellow Diamond's power disrupts the body. Blue Diamond's power overwhelms emotions. Combined, they created something that was arguably worse than death. It wasn't damage to the gemstone. It was damage to the mind itself, and it was nearly impossible to heal. Interestingly, it's later revealed in the show that the diamonds didn't even know their attack would cause corruption. Blue and Yellow Diamond believed they were destroying the gems outright. The corruption was an unintended side effect, a consequence of using only 3 diamond powers instead of 4. There's a theory, and it's a compelling one, that if Pink Diamond's power over life force had been included, the attack would have worked as intended and simply annihilated every gem on Earth's surface. Pink Diamond's absence is what turned a weapon of destruction into a weapon of corruption. Her rebellion saved the crystal gems even in its failure. Rose Quartz was able to protect herself, Garnet, and Pearl using her shield. The 3 of them huddled together under that pink bubble as the light washed over the planet and destroyed everyone they had fought alongside. Bismuth was safe because Rose had bubbled her earlier after a violent disagreement about the breaking point, a weapon Bismuth had created that could shatter gems permanently. Rose refused to use it, and when Bismuth wouldn't back down, Rose poofed her and sealed her away without telling anyone. Amethyst was safe because she was still incubating deep in the prime kindergarten and hadn't emerged yet. Lapis Lazuli survived because she was trapped inside the mirror, which somehow shielded her. Everyone else was corrupted. The war was over. The crystal gems had technically won. Homeworld had left Earth, but the victory was hollow, and the cost was almost incomprehensible. Hundreds of gems, allies, and enemies alike were now monsters roaming the Earth. Rose, Garnet, and Pearl were the only crystal gems left standing. 3 survivors of a war that had lasted centuries, surrounded by the corrupted remnants of everyone they had known. And they couldn't heal them. Rose tried. She tried for thousands of years. Her healing powers could temporarily restore a corrupted gem's mind, but the corruption always came back. The best they could do was contain them. They would track down corrupted gems, defeat them in combat, and bubble their gemstones for safekeeping inside the temple. They hoped that someday, somehow, they'd find a way to fix what the diamonds had done. For 5,000 years, that was the crystal gem's life, guarding Earth, bubbling corrupted gems, living with the memory of everything they had lost. Pearl carried the secret of Pink Diamond's true identity in silence. Garnet held the team together with quiet strength. And Rose Quartz, the leader who had started it all, wandered through the centuries wondering if what she had done was worth the cost. It's actually really tragic when you think about it. The crystal gems won the war, technically, but the cost was almost everything. The gems they fought alongside were turned into monsters, and the 3 survivors had to live with that for millennia. And the whole time, the the truth about Pink Diamond was right there, buried underneath Rose Quartz's smile. And then, thousands of years later, something happened that none of them expected. Rose Quartz fell in love. His name was Greg Universe, and he was, by all accounts, not exactly what you'd call impressive. He was a community college dropout, a traveling musician with a beat-up van, and a sleazy manager named Marty, who was trying to help him get a music career off the ground. Greg rolled into Beach City one day to play a concert, and almost nobody showed up. But Rose Quartz did. Rose had encountered humans before. She had even loved some of them, or thought she had. Pearl mentions at one point that Rose met with various men throughout her long stay on Earth, but Greg was different. Greg was the first human who Rose had a real, genuine, significant romantic relationship with. And the reason for that, oddly enough, is that Greg called her out. See, at first, Rose treated Greg the way she treated most humans, with fascination, like a curiosity, like a really interesting pet. And Greg, to his credit, noticed this and told her that if they were going to be together, she needed to see him as an equal, not as something cute to observe, but as a real person. That conversation, which happens in the episode We Need to Talk, is one of the show's most quietly powerful moments. Rose looks at Greg and, for what might be the first time in thousands of years, genuinely tries to understand another being as her equal. They fell in love. Greg moved to Beach City permanently and opened a car wash. He lived in his van for years. By choice, mostly, because he liked the simplicity of it. He and Rose spent their time together exploring, talking, and listening to music. It was a quiet, happy life. And then Rose made a decision that changed everything. Rose Quartz chose to give up her physical form to create Steven. This was unprecedented. No gem had ever done anything like this before. Gems don't reproduce biologically. They're grown in kindergartens. But Rose wanted to create something new, something that was both gem and human. She wanted to bring a child into the world, and the only way to do that was to pass her gemstone on to him. When Steven was born, Rose's pink gemstone transferred from her belly to his. She ceased to exist as a separate being. She didn't die. Not exactly, because her gem still exists as part of Steven. But Rose Quartz, as a person, as a consciousness, was gone. She became part of her son. And Steven would spend the rest of his life trying to figure out what that means. It took the crystal gems years to process what Rose had done. The concept of birth, of organic reproduction, of a gem choosing to stop existing in order to create a new life, was completely alien to them. Pearl especially struggled. She had loved Rose for thousands of years, had fought a war for her, had kept her darkest secret, and now Rose was just gone, replaced by a baby. A human baby with a gem in his belly button who couldn't even summon a shield yet, but they loved him. Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl loved Steven from the very beginning, even if they didn't always know how to show it. After spending his first few years living primarily with Greg, Steven moved into the beach house with the gems and became part of their world. The early episodes of Steven Universe are, honestly, kind of deceptive in their simplicity. Steven is about 13 when the series starts. He's chubby, cheerful, wears a star t-shirt and flip-flops, and loves a discontinued ice cream novelty called Cookie Cats. He's obsessed with a fictional cartoon called Crying Breakfast Friends. He spends his days hanging out at the Big Donut with his friends Lars and Sadie, eating fry bits from the boardwalk, and trying very hard to be a real crystal gem. The first episode, Gem Glow, centers on Steven accidentally discovering he can summon his mother's shield, a round pink shield that he activates by feeling happy. It's played for laughs mostly. Steven figures out the trigger after eating a cookie cat, but it's also the beginning of everything. That shield is what protected the crystal gems from the corrupting light 5,000 years ago. That shield will save the world more than once before the series is done, and Steven figures out how to use it because of an ice cream sandwich. That's the kind of show this is. Enormous stakes delivered through the smallest, most human moments. Over the course of the first 2 seasons, Steven slowly discovers his powers and earns his place on the team. He learns he has Healing Spit, a power inherited from Rose who had healing tears. He learns to create protective bubbles that can contain objects and even gems. He learns to summon his shield more reliably. And he starts going on real missions with Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, fighting corrupted gem monsters and protecting Beach City. Along the way, he makes some important connections. He befriends Connie Maheswaran, a smart, bookish, slightly anxious girl who becomes his best friend and, eventually, his partner in every sense of the word. Connie is the first human Stephen's age who really understands what his life is like, and she trains with Pearl to become a sword fighter so she can fight alongside him. Stephen and Connie can even fuse together into a being called Stevani, which is remarkable because Stephen is the only being who is both human and gem, and Stevani represents the trust and love between them. Stephen also discovers Lion, a mysterious magical pink lion who just shows up one day and won't leave. Lion has a pocket dimension inside his mane where objects can be stored, and Stephen eventually discovers that this pocket dimension contains things Rose Quartz left behind, including a sword, a VHS tape, and eventually a bubbled bismuth. We later learn that Lion's connection to Rose runs deeper than anyone expected. The first real hint that the show's scope is about to expand comes when the crystal gems encounter Lapis Lazuli. Lapis had been trapped inside a magical mirror for 5,000 years, since the end of the Gem War. The crystal gems had been using the mirror as a tool without realizing there was a conscious gem trapped inside it. Stephen discovers she's alive, frees her, and she steals the Earth's ocean to fly herself back to Homeworld. Lapis is furious at the crystal gems. From her perspective, they trapped her and left her to rot for millennia. She doesn't care about their war or their rebellion. She just wants to go home. Her story introduces one of the show's recurring themes, that the crystal gems' victory in the war had casualties they never acknowledged. People got hurt who shouldn't have, and not everyone who suffered was an enemy. But the real escalation comes when Homeworld gems start arriving on Earth. First comes Peridot, a small, anxious, technologically advanced gem who was sent to check on a secret project buried deep inside the Earth called the Cluster. The Cluster is a massive forced fusion experiment. Hundreds of shattered gem fragments forced together into one enormous mass buried in the Earth's core. If it ever fully forms, it would destroy the entire planet. Homeworld planted it during the war as a geoweapon, a doomsday device in case they ever wanted to finish what the corrupting light started. Peridot arrives with Jasper, a huge, powerful quartz soldier who was made in the Beta Kindergarten during the Gem War specifically to fight the rebellion. Jasper is aggressive, cruel, and utterly devoted to Homeworld's ideology. She hates the crystal gems, hates Earth, and especially hates Rose Quartz, who she blames for the destruction of her diamond. They also bring Lapis Lazuli back with them, as an informant. But things go sideways fast. Stephen and the crystal gems manage to defeat Jasper and Peridot, and in one of the show's most startling moments, Lapis Lazuli fuses with Jasper to form Malekith, a massive, unstable fusion held together by mutual hatred. Lapis drags Malekith to the bottom of the ocean, using all of her hydrokinetic power to keep Jasper trapped, essentially imprisoning them both. It's not an act of heroism, it's an act of desperation and control. And the show is very honest about the fact that Malekith isn't a healthy fusion. It's a metaphor for a toxic relationship, two beings holding each other hostage. The shift in the show after this point is noticeable. Things get heavier, the stakes get higher. The corrupted gem monsters that used to be the main threat become background noise as Stephen starts dealing with Homeworld itself, with the legacy of his mother, and with questions that don't have easy answers. What happened to Pink Diamond? Why did Rose shatter her? Was it justified? And what does it mean that Stephen has her gem? These are the questions that drive the next 3 seasons. And the answers, when they come, change everything. The thing about the early seasons that I really appreciate, looking back, is how much groundwork they laid without you noticing. Small details that seemed like throwaway lines or minor plot points turn out to be crucial later. The way Pearl reacts whenever Pink Diamond is mentioned. The fact that Lion's mane contains Rose's belongings. The design of Stephen's gem and the way it's oriented differently from every other rose quartz we see. It's all there. Rebecca Sugar and her team knew where they were going the whole time, and they seeded the clues from the very first season. And this is really where the show kicks into another gear. Because once Homeworld comes back into the picture, Stephen starts uncovering secrets that have been buried for thousands of years. Let's start with Peridot, because her arc is one of the most satisfying redemption stories in the whole series. When we first meet Peridot, she's a Homeworld technician sent to Earth to check on the cluster. She's uptight, robotic, and views organic life as worthless. She refers to the crystal gems as clods, and treats the whole planet as a waste of resources. She's not even a fighter. She's an Era 2 gem, which means she was made after Homeworld started running low on resources. So she doesn't have the same natural powers as older gems. She relies entirely on her technology, her limb enhancers, and her screens. After being stranded on Earth and eventually captured by the crystal gems, Peridot slowly begins to change. Stephen, being Stephen, refuses to treat her like an enemy. He talks to her. He listens to her. He shows her the things about Earth that make it worth protecting. And gradually, grudgingly, Peridot starts to see what Rose Quartz saw thousands of years ago. That this planet is alive. That the life on it matters. The turning point comes in the episode Message Received. Peridot manages to contact Yellow Diamond directly, and the crystal gems expect her to betray them. Instead, Peridot pleads with Yellow Diamond to spare the Earth, pointing out its unique resources and potential. Yellow Diamond dismisses her, and Peridot, in a moment of genuine defiance, calls Yellow Diamond a clod to her face and smashes the communicator. It's one of those moments where you want to stand up and cheer. This tiny, anxious gem, who was raised to worship the diamonds, just told the most powerful being she knows to her face that she's wrong. Peridot officially becomes a crystal gem. Meanwhile, Stephen and Peridot deal with the cluster. They travel deep into the Earth's crust, into the enormous mass of shattered gem fragments that Homeworld planted thousands of years ago. The cluster is on the verge of fully forming, which would destroy the planet. But Stephen, using his empathic abilities, manages to communicate with the fragments. The shards of shattered gems inside the cluster are in pain, they're confused, they're reaching out for each other. And Stephen helps them find peace. The cluster bubbles itself from within, containing its own form and neutralizing the threat without violence. It's a very Steven Universe solution. No big fight, no weapon, just empathy and communication. The kid literally talked a doomsday weapon into calming down. Around this same time, we get one of the show's most emotionally complex arcs involving Lapis Lazuli. Malachite is eventually defeated and Lapis is freed. But freedom doesn't fix her. Lapis is deeply traumatized, first by being trapped in the mirror for 5,000 years, then by her time fused with Jasper at the bottom of the ocean. She's scared, angry, and doesn't trust anyone. Stephen convinces her to stay on Earth, and she reluctantly moves into a barn with Peridot, who is probably the last gem Lapis would have chosen as a roommate. But over time, they develop a genuine friendship. Peridot introduces Lapis to television, specifically a show called Camp Pining Hearts, and they bond over it. It's awkward and weird and kind of beautiful. Two damaged people learning to coexist. Then there's Bismuth, remember her? Rose bubbled her during the war after they fought over the breaking point, a weapon that could shatter gems permanently. Stephen discovers Bismuth's bubble inside Lion's mane and releases her. Bismuth is overjoyed to be free and reunites with the crystal gems in one of the show's warmest moments. She's loud, passionate, generous, and genuinely fun to be around. But things fall apart when Bismuth brings up the breaking point again. She wants Stephen to use it to finish what Rose started. Stephen refuses, just like his mother did. Bismuth snaps, and they fight. Stephen is forced to poof her and bubble her again. It's one of the hardest things he's ever had to do. And it raises a question that the show doesn't shy away from. Was Rose right to bubble Bismuth? Or did she just silence a friend who disagreed with her? The answer, like most things in Steven universe, isn't simple. Jasper meanwhile descends further into obsession. She becomes fixated on fusion, on becoming stronger, and she starts forcing corrupted gems to fuse with her. In the episode Earthlings, Jasper fuses with a corrupted gem and is herself corrupted. Steven watches it happen. He watches a powerful, defiant warrior lose her mind and her form, reduced to the same monstrous state as the hundreds of gems the diamonds corrupted at the end of the war. It's horrifying, and it's another reminder that the consequences of that ancient conflict are still playing out. Things escalate when Aquamarine and Topaz, two homeworld gems, are sent to Earth to collect humans for the zoo. They capture several of Steven's friends, and Steven surrenders himself to protect them. He tells Aquamarine that he is Rose Quartz, the gem who shattered Pink Diamond, taking responsibility for a crime his mother committed, or rather, faked committing, though Steven doesn't know that yet. Steven is taken to Homeworld. This is the first time we see Gem Homeworld in the present day, and it's a sobering experience. The planet is fractured and massive, with towering structures and rigid social order. Steven meets Blue Diamond, who is still consumed by grief over Pink Diamond's death. Blue Diamond keeps a human zoo in space as a memorial to Pink Diamond's colony, a place where captured humans live in blissful ignorance, cared for but imprisoned. Steven is put on trial for the shattering of Pink Diamond. During the trial, his defense attorney, a blue zircon, makes a startling observation. She points out that none of the evidence makes sense. How could a Rose Quartz soldier get close enough to a diamond to shatter her when Pink Diamond was surrounded by guards, attendants, and her own pearl? The zircon implies that someone with authority, someone Pink Diamond trusted, must have been involved. The diamonds are furious and shut down the trial. This is one of those moments where the show is dropping a massive hint right in front of us. The zircon is essentially laying out the truth that the shattering was an inside job, that it was Pink Diamond herself. But at this point in the show, neither Steven nor the audience is ready to put the pieces together. Steven escapes Homeworld with the help of Lars Barriga, his friend from Beach City who was captured alongside him. During their escape, Lars is killed. He dies protecting Steven and the Off-Colors, a group of defective gems who have been hiding in Homeworld's underground, rejected by society for being different. There's Rhodonite, a cross-gem fusion who can't stop being fused. Padparacha, a sapphire who can only see the past instead of the future. The Rutile twins, a gem who emerged conjoined. And Fluorite, a fusion of 6 different gems. In one of the show's most emotionally devastating moments, Steven cries over Lars's body. His tears, which have healing powers, bring Lars back to life. But Lars isn't the same. He's turned pink, like Lion. His hair now functions as a portal, connected to the pocket dimension inside Lion's mane. Lars is alive, but he's been changed fundamentally. He stays in space with the Off-Colors, and they eventually become space pirates called the Lars of the Stars, which honestly is kind of a great outcome for a guy who started the series as a grumpy donut shop employee. And then comes the moment, the reveal that changes everything. Season 5, Episode 18, A Single Pale Rose. Aired on May 7th, 2018. This is the episode that the entire series had been building toward. Steven notices that Pearl has been acting strangely. She keeps trying to tell him something, but she physically can't get the words out. Her hands fly to her mouth. Her gem glows. She's fighting against something internal. Steven realizes that the answer's trapped inside Pearl's gem, and he enters her mind to find it. Inside Pearl's gem, Steven passes through layers of Pearl's memories and compartmentalized thoughts. He sees Pearl's memories of Rose's pregnancy, of the aftermath of the war, of moments she's tried to bury, and then he reaches the deepest layer, the memory of the shattering. Steven sees it happen. He sees gem shards on the ground. He sees someone who looks like Rose Quartz standing over Pink Diamond's body. But when he steps closer, he realizes it's not Rose. It's Pearl, shape-shifted into Rose's form. Pearl reveals Pink Diamond's undamaged gemstone in her hand. The gem is fine. Pink Diamond was never shattered. Stephen is pulled even deeper into the memory. He finds himself inside Pink Diamond's palanquin, watching a conversation between Rose Quartz and Pearl. Pearl is hesitant. She doesn't want to go through with it, but Rose insists. She tells Pearl that after this, they'll be free. And then, to Stephen's absolute shock, Rose Quartz transforms. She reverts to her true form. She is Pink Diamond. Pink Diamond creates the fake gem shards. She swallows them. She gives Pearl the final command. My Pearl, you must never let anyone know what happened today. And she walks out to be shattered. Stephen is pulled back to the real world. He sits there, processing what he just saw, and then he says it out loud. She didn't really shatter Pink Diamond. Rose Quartz is Pink Diamond. Behind him, Amethyst and Garnet gasp. They had no idea. This is genuinely one of the best twists in animated television. Not because it's a shock for the sake of being shocking, but because it reframes the entire series. Every conversation about Rose, every memory, every one of Pearl's painful silences, every time the diamonds grieved for Pink, it all means something completely different now. Rose Quartz wasn't a common soldier who killed a tyrant. She was the tyrant herself, or rather, a diamond who became something more and something less at the same time. She freed herself and her friends, but she did it through deception that caused incalculable suffering to the people she left behind. The emotional fallout is immediate and brutal. Garnet diffuses. Sapphire is furious, heartbroken, because she trusted Rose completely and everything was a lie. Ruby doesn't know how to feel. Amethyst is confused. Greg is stunned. Bismuth, when she eventually learns the truth, screams in frustration because suddenly everything she went through, being bubbled, being silenced, all of it makes a terrible kind of sense. And Stephen has to sit with the knowledge that his mother wasn't just a rebel leader. She was a diamond. She was part of the authority she claimed to fight against. The diamonds aren't just his enemies. They're his family. And the war, the shattering, the corruption, all the suffering that followed, happened because of a lie his mother told. That's a lot for a 16-year-old to carry. And that brings us to the climax of the original series, where Stephen has to do the thing his mother never could. He has to face the diamonds, tell them the truth, and try to fix what was broken. But first, a wedding. After the revelation about Pink Diamond, the crystal gems are in crisis. Garnet, who has been the team's anchor for thousands of years, is literally falling apart. Ruby and Sapphire, the two gems who make up Garnet, have diffused because Sapphire can't reconcile the truth about Rose with everything she believed. Sapphire feels betrayed to her core. She trusted Rose completely, built her entire understanding of the rebellion and Rose's story, and now all of that was a lie. Ruby, on the other hand, is less angry about the lie and more focused on what matters to her, which is Sapphire. Ruby just wants them to be okay. Ruby and Sapphire reconcile in one of the show's most tender moments. They talk it through. They grieve together. And then Ruby proposes, not because they need to get married, they've been fused for thousands of years, but because they want to choose each other deliberately, consciously, after everything they've learned. The wedding episode, Reunited, is a landmark in animation history. It features the first same-sex wedding in a mainstream American animated children's series. Rebecca Sugar fought Cartoon Network for years to make this happen. The network was resistant for a long time, worried about backlash from international markets. When the series was distributed to other countries, some markets actually censored the show by making Ruby male, recontextualizing the romance as heterosexual. Sugar pushed back against all of this. She wanted Ruby and Sapphire's love to be visible and celebrated. The wedding is beautiful. Ruby wears a dress. Sapphire wears a suit, because they wanted to surprise each other. Stephen officiates. The crystal gems and the beach city residents all attend. It's joyful and warm, and for about 10 minutes, everything feels okay. And then Blue Diamond shows up. Blue Diamond's attack during the wedding is sudden and devastating. She hits the beach with waves of her emotional power, forcing everyone into uncontrollable grief. Yellow Diamond arrives shortly after, destabilizing gems with her physical disruption abilities. The crystal gems fight back, and during the battle, Steven manages to reach Blue Diamond emotionally. He connects with her empathically, sharing his feelings and memories. And he tells her the truth. He tells her that Rose Quartz was Pink Diamond. Blue Diamond doesn't believe him at first, but the evidence is undeniable. Steven has Pink Diamond's gem. He has her powers. He knows things only Pink Diamond would know. Slowly, agonizingly, Blue Diamond begins to accept it. Yellow Diamond, characteristically, takes longer to come around, but eventually she does too. Their sister, the diamond they mourned for thousands of years, wasn't murdered. She chose to leave them. She chose to become someone else. She chose Earth over Homeworld. The grief the diamonds feel in this moment is interesting, because the show doesn't let them off the hook. Yes, they lost their sister, but they also drove her away. They dismissed her, belittled her, refused to listen to her. Pink Diamond became Rose Quartz, because the diamonds wouldn't let her be herself. And now they have to sit with that. Steven travels to Homeworld with the diamonds to confront White Diamond, who has been largely absent from the series up to this point. White Diamond is the oldest, the most powerful, and the most terrifying of the four. She's presented as this enormous, luminous figure who barely acknowledges other beings. In her view, she is perfect. The other diamonds are extensions of her. All gems are reflections of her light. Anything that deviates from that is a flaw to be corrected. White Diamond's power is the ability to control other gems' minds, overwriting their personalities and making them extensions of herself. When Steven arrives on Homeworld, White Diamond takes control of Blue Diamond, Yellow Diamond, and even the crystal gems. She turns them all white, puppeting them with her will. She believes that Steven is just Pink Diamond pretending to be human, and she's annoyed by the performance. In the climactic moment of the entire series, White Diamond removes Steven's gem from his body. She rips it right out of his belly, expecting Pink Diamond to re-emerge. If Steven is just a vessel for Pink Diamond, then pulling out the gem should reveal the diamond inside, but that's not what happens. Steven's gem, separated from his human body, doesn't become Pink Diamond. It becomes a pink, glowing version of Steven. A gem Steven, the gem half of who he is. And it's furious. It creates an enormous shield pushing White Diamond back, and it walks calmly towards Steven's human half, which is lying on the ground, weak and barely conscious. The two halves of Steven reunite. They fuse. They become whole again. And White Diamond, for the first time in her existence, is confused. Because Steven isn't Pink Diamond. He isn't a vessel or a disguise or a phase. He's Steven, a new being. Something that has never existed before. Half human, half gem, entirely himself. This moment is the emotional core of the entire series. It's the answer to the question that has hung over everything since the first episode. Is Steven just a replacement for Rose Quartz? Is he just Pink Diamond in a new body? And the answer is no. He's Steven. He has Rose's gem, and he has her legacy, but he is his own person. His identity isn't inherited, it's his. White Diamond is shaken. For the first time, she's wrong about something fundamental. She believes she was perfect, that her understanding of reality was complete. And here's this small, crying, half-human boy who proves that the universe is bigger and stranger than she ever imagined. And in that moment, White Diamond does something she has never done before. She blushes. She turns pink. She reveals her own flaw, her own vulnerability. She's not perfect. She never was. It's a small thing, a blush, but it cracks open 5,000 years of tyranny. If White Diamond isn't perfect, then the entire foundation of gem society, the caste system, the hierarchy, the rules about who you're supposed to be, all of it crumbles, because it was all built on the idea that White knew best, that perfection was possible and mandatory, and it's not. The other diamonds follow White's lead. Blue and Yellow, already shaken by the truth about Pink, begin to let go of their rigid ideals. The authority that governed the gem empire for thousands of years starts to dissolve. And then comes the healing. Stephen convinces the diamonds to return to Earth and help him heal the corrupted gems. For 5,000 years, Rose Quartz tried and failed to reverse the corruption. She could temporarily restore a gem's mind, but the damage always came back. The corruption was caused by the combined power of 3 diamonds, and it would take the combined power of all 4 to undo it. Except Pink Diamond is gone, and Stephen has inherited her role. At Rose's fountain, Stephen and the 3 diamonds combine their powers. Stephen's healing tears and Pink Diamond's life force, channeled through him, complete the circuit that was missing from the original attack. The fountain glows and the corrupted gems begin to heal. Hundreds of gems that have been monsters for 5,000 years, are restored to their original forms. They emerge from their corruption confused, disoriented, but conscious. They can think again. They can speak. They can remember who they are. Some of them carry physical scars of their corruption, discolored markings on their skin, small horns or spikes, reminders of what they went through. But they're themselves again. This is a profoundly emotional moment. These aren't just random background characters being healed. These are the Crystal Gem's fallen comrades, the soldiers who fought alongside Rose Quartz in the rebellion and were left behind when the corrupting light hit. They've been trapped in their own bodies, mindless and suffering, for 50 centuries. And now they're free. Among the healed gems is Jasper, who carries a distinctive teal marking across her face from her corruption. When she reforms, she immediately kneels before Stephen, recognizing him as her diamond. It's a complicated moment. Jasper's loyalty to the diamond hierarchy hasn't changed, but her corruption is healed. Nephrid, also known as Centibeetle, a corrupted gem that Stephen had been trying to help since early in the series, is also fully restored. She reunites with her crew, the homeworld gems who were stranded on Earth when the corrupting light hit and corrupted alongside her. This marks the beginning of what the show calls Era 3. The Gem Empire's caste system is abolished. Gems are no longer assigned roles at creation. Cross-gem fusion is no longer forbidden. Gems are free to be whoever they want to be, to live wherever they choose, to define their own purpose. It's the revolution that Rose Quartz fought for, except it took her son to actually finish it. The original series ends here. Change Your Mind, the series finale, aired on January 21st, 2019. It's a deeply satisfying conclusion. The war is over, truly over this time. The corrupted gems are healed. The diamonds have begun to change. Stephen has proven that he's his own person. And the universe, for the first time in thousands of years, has a chance at peace. It's a pretty incredible ending for a show that started with a kid trying to summon a magic shield by eating ice cream sandwiches. And that could have been the end. Rebecca Sugar could have stopped there, and it would have been one of the greatest animated series ever made. But she had more to say. 2 more stories, in fact. A movie about the consequences of Pink Diamond's past catching up with the present, and a limited series about what happens when the hero who saved the world realizes he forgot to save himself. Let's start with the movie. Steven Universe. The movie came out on September 2nd, 2019, about 8 months after the original series finale. It's a full-length television film, and it's also a musical, which feels fitting for a show that always used music as one of its primary emotional languages. Rebecca Sugar wrote several of the songs herself, and the movie features musical collaborations with artists like Chance the Rapper, Estelle, Amy Mann, and others. The movie is set 2 years after the events of Change Your Mind. Stephen is 16 now, and things are good. Really good. He's been splitting his time between Earth and Homeworld, helping to dismantle the old empire and usher in Era 3. The Diamonds have been reforming Gem Society, abolishing the caste system, and giving gems the freedom to choose their own paths. It's messy and imperfect, but it's progress. Stephen has essentially become a galactic diplomat, which is a wild job title for a teenager. But here we are. The Diamonds, for their part, are trying. Blue Diamond has turned her empathic abilities toward helping gems process their emotions. Yellow Diamond is using her powers to help gems who want to change their physical forms. White Diamond is, working on herself, which for someone who spent thousands of years believing she was perfect is no small task. They clearly adore Steven, partly because he reminds them of Pink Diamond, and partly because he showed them a better way to exist. But they also want him to stay on Homeworld and take Pink Diamond's place, which Steven firmly does not want to do. He wants to go home. He wants to live on Earth with his family and his friends and just be a kid for a while. The movie opens with Steven returning to Beach City after a trip to Homeworld, and there's this gorgeous musical number called Happily Ever After, where Steven, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl all sing about how everything has worked out. They've saved the universe, the war is over, the diamonds have changed. For the first time in the history of the crystal gems, there's no threat, no mission, no crisis, just peace. And then, naturally, everything goes wrong. A giant injector, a homeworld device designed to pump toxic material into a planet, crashes into the hillside above Beach City. And riding on top of it is a gem who calls herself a Spinel. Remember Spinel? Pink Diamond's playmate? The gem who was created to be her best friend, who Pink told to stand still and wait for her in a garden? The one who waited for 6,000 years. Here she is, and she is furious. Spinel's design is one of the most striking in the entire franchise. She's modeled after early rubber hose animation, the style of 1920s and 1930s cartoons like Betty Boop and Felix the Cat. Her limbs are stretchy and elastic, her movements are exaggerated and unpredictable, and her expressions swing wildly between manic joy and absolute rage. She moves like a cartoon from a different era, which makes her both funny and deeply unsettling. Spinel announces that she's here to destroy Steven and the Earth. She attacks with a scythe-like weapon called a Rejuvenator, which has the ability to reset a gem to their factory default state, essentially wiping their memories and reverting them to who they were when they first emerged. She poofs Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl in quick succession, and when they reform, they have no memory of who they are or what they've been through. Garnet reforms as Ruby and Sapphire, two separate gems who don't know each other. Amethyst reforms as a blank, childlike version of herself with no personality or memories. Pearl reforms as, well, a pearl. A default homeworld pearl whose only instinct is to serve her owner. Since Steven is the first person she sees after reforming, she latches onto Greg, who happens to be standing next to Steven, and starts calling him my universe and trying to serve him. Steven also takes a hit from the Rejuvenator, which weakens his gem powers, though it doesn't reset him the way it resets the other gems. His shield is gone. His healing abilities are compromised. He's essentially just a human kid trying to deal with a cosmic crisis, using nothing but his personality and his love for his friends. The structure of the movie from this point is essentially Steven trying to restore each gem's memories by recreating the formative experiences that made them who they are. He needs to remind them of who they became, not who they were made to be. It's a beautiful narrative device, because it forces the show to revisit and celebrate the growth these characters have undergone over the entire series. For Ruby and Sapphire, Steven reenacts the moment they first fused. He puts them in a situation where Ruby instinctively protects Sapphire, triggering the same emotional connection that created Garnet in the first place. They fuse, but this version of Garnet still doesn't have her memories. She's Garnet, but she's new. She doesn't remember her life. She has to rebuild from scratch, which is its own kind of heartbreaking. For Amethyst, Steven spends time with her doing the things they've always done together, being silly, being reckless, being friends. The song No Matter What captures this beautifully. It's a duet about unconditional friendship. Amethyst's memories come back through the accumulation of small, genuine moments they share. She doesn't need a dramatic trigger, she just needs Steven to be himself, and she remembers that she's herself too. Pearl is the hardest. Her default programming as a Pearl is to serve, and she's fixated on serving Greg. She doesn't want to be independent. She doesn't want to fight or think for herself. The idea of disobedience is literally incomprehensible to her in this state. This is who Pearl was before Rose Quartz inspired her to be more. Before the rebellion, before she learned that she could choose her own purpose. The group takes Pearl to a rock concert, a performance by Sadie Miller and her band The Suspects, hoping that the rebellious energy of the music will spark something in Pearl. And it does. Eventually, Pearl watches Sadie perform with raw, defiant energy, and something clicks. Pearl's memories of rebellion, of fighting alongside Rose, of choosing to be more than what she was made to be, all of it floods back. She remembers, and when she remembers, she fights. Meanwhile, Peridot discovers that Spinel's injector is pumping a toxic substance called biopoison into the earth that will kill all organic life on the planet. The clock is ticking. Steven needs to find a way to stop the injector, and the key might be Spinel herself. Here's where the movie does something really smart. Steven can't restore Spinel's memories the way he restored the other gems, because Steven never knew Spinel. The only person who knew Spinel was Pink Diamond. And Pink Diamond is gone. Steven doesn't have shared experiences to draw on. He doesn't have moments to recreate. He has nothing. Spinel, when she's in her reset state, is delightful. She's goofy, energetic, affectionate, and desperate to play. She's the friend Pink Diamond created her to be, a bouncy, happy companion who just wants to make people laugh. And Steven, because he's Steven, starts to genuinely enjoy spending time with her. They bond. She follows him around, doing silly things, and for a brief window, it feels like maybe this will be okay. Maybe Spinel can start over. But then Spinel's memories come back, and the shift is devastating. One moment she's laughing and playing, and the next she remembers everything. She remembers standing in the garden. She remembers waiting. She remembers the thousands of years of silence. She remembers finding out, through Steven's own broadcast to the universe, that Pink Diamond was gone. That she had been abandoned. Spinel's rage returns, and it's worse now because she briefly experienced what it felt like to be happy again, to have a friend, and she knows it was built on the same foundation as before. Steven is Pink Diamond's son. His kindness toward her is, in her mind, just another version of the same trick. There's a song called Drift Away that plays during a montage of Spinel's memories, and I'll be honest, it's one of the most emotionally devastating pieces of music in the entire franchise. It's sung from Spinel's perspective as she stands in the garden, watching the seasons change, watching the galaxy move around her, slowly realizing that nobody is coming back for her. The song captures 6,000 years of abandonment in about 3 minutes. It's brutal. Steven manages to get through to Spinel, not by fixing her or erasing her pain, but by acknowledging it. He tells her that what Pink Diamond did was wrong. He doesn't make excuses for his mother. He doesn't try to explain it away. He simply says that Spinel deserved better, and that she still does. The injector is ultimately stopped. Steven figures out that his powers aren't working because he's been trying to use them the way his mother did, to maintain the status quo, to keep things as they were. But that's not who he is. Steven's power isn't about preservation, it's about growth. It's about change. Once he accepts that, his powers come back stronger than ever, and he's able to neutralize the biopoison. Spinel's resolution is interesting because it's not a traditional redemption arc. She doesn't join the crystal gems. She doesn't stay on Earth. Instead, she goes to live with the diamonds on Homeworld. Blue, yellow, and white diamond embrace her because she reminds them of Pink, and more importantly, because they understand what it feels like to be left behind by someone you loved. Spinel finds a family, not the family she wanted, but one that genuinely cares for her. It's not perfect, but it's something. The movie ends with Steven and the crystal gems back in Beach City, looking out at the sunset. The crisis is over. The Earth is safe again. But the movie has planted a seed that will bloom in the epilogue series. Steven's powers glitched during the movie. His identity was questioned. The weight of his mother's legacy reached out from the past and almost destroyed everything. And Steven handled it, like he always does, by putting everyone else first. The question the movie leaves hanging quietly, almost imperceptibly, is what about Steven? Who takes care of Steven? Because everyone in the movie got their memories back. Everyone got to rediscover who they are. Everyone got to heal. Except him. Spinel's story is honestly heartbreaking. She was literally designed to be someone's best friend, and that someone just left her standing in a garden for 6,000 years without a word. When I think about the villains in Steven Universe, Spinel might be the one who makes me the saddest. Not because she's the most dangerous, but because her pain is so simple and so human. She just wanted someone to come back for her, and nobody did. The movie wraps up nicely on the surface. Steven's saved the day again. Everything seems fine. But here's the thing about Steven Universe as a show. It was never really about saving the world. It was about the people doing the saving. And the final chapter of this story turns the camera on the one person who never got to deal with his own stuff. Steven Universe Future aired its first episode on December 7th, 2019. And it's unlike anything else in the franchise. The original series was about a kid saving the world. The movie was about the past catching up with the present. Steven Universe Future is about what happens after you've saved the world and you don't know who you are without a crisis to solve. It's 20 episodes long, it ran through March 27th, 2020, and it's one of the most honest, unflinching portrayals of trauma and mental health I've ever seen in any medium, let alone a children's cartoon. The premise seems simple enough at first. It's been a couple of years since the events of the movie. Steven is running something called Little Homeschool, an educational program in Beach City designed to help formerly corrupted gems and recently arrived homeworld gems adjust to life on Earth. He teaches them about human culture, helps them find new purposes, and generally serves as a bridge between gem life and human life. It's a good thing. It's important work, and Steven is good at it. But underneath the surface, something is wrong. And it takes most of the series for Steven and for the audience to understand what it is. The early episodes of Future show Steven dealing with relatively small-scale problems. A group of corrupted gems who haven't been healed yet. A few homeworld gems who are struggling to adapt. Old enemies who need guidance. In one of the first episodes, Steven encounters a Jasper who has already been healed but is living alone in the woods, refusing to participate in the new era. Jasper is loyal to the diamond hierarchy and sees Steven as her diamond. But Steven doesn't want followers. He wants Jasper to find her own path. She refuses. It's an uncomfortable interaction that sets up a dynamic that will become important later. Steven also meets Volleyball, Pink Diamond's original Pearl, the one whose eye was damaged by one of Pink Diamond's explosive tantrums. Steven tries to heal her because that's what Steven does. He fixes things, he heals people. But his powers don't work on Volleyball's cracked eye. Her damage isn't physical, it's psychological. The crack in her gem is a manifestation of deep psychological trauma inflicted by Pink Diamond's rage. And no amount of healing spit can fix that. This frustrates Steven enormously. And in a moment that shocks both Volleyball and our Pearl, Steven screams in anger about his mother, releasing a shockwave of pink energy that shatters the building around them. The explosion sends Volleyball into a fear response, a triggered PTSD reaction, because the destructive pink energy is exactly what damaged her in the first place. Pink Diamond's explosive temper. And now Steven has it too. This is the first real sign that something is deeply wrong with Steven. And it's handled with a subtlety that I really admire. The show doesn't announce that Steven has a problem. It shows you. It lets you see the cracks forming and trusts you to recognize what they mean. For a while, Steven keeps things together. His powers are evolving in ways he doesn't fully understand. He can turn pink now, his entire body flushing with pink energy when he's stressed or emotional. His strength increases dramatically. He can create diamond-hard barriers. His empathic abilities are stronger than ever. These aren't new powers, exactly. They're his existing powers amplified by emotional distress. But Steven doesn't see it that way. He just thinks he's getting stronger. He doesn't realize his body is sounding an alarm. The cracks start to widen in the episode Little Graduation. Steven attends a graduation ceremony for Little Homeschool and discovers that the world has moved on without him. Lars and Sadie are no longer together. Lars is heading back into space with the Off-Colors. Sadie has formed a new band with a new partner named Shep. Several of Steven's Beach City friends are leaving town to go to college or pursue their own lives. The Gems are busy with their own projects. Garnet is teaching. Pearl is mentoring. Amethyst is counseling. Everyone has found their purpose. Everyone is growing. And Stephen, the person who spent his entire life helping others find themselves, doesn't know who he is without someone to help. This is where Future stops being a fun epilogue and starts being something much more uncomfortable. Stephen's reaction to little graduation is visceral. He becomes upset, and his powers respond. He accidentally traps several people inside a shrinking pink bubble because on some subconscious level, he doesn't want them to leave. He doesn't want things to change. He wants to hold on to the people he loves, and his powers are manifesting that desire in the most literal, suffocating way possible. After this, Stephen spirals. He tries to find new purposes for himself, and each attempt goes wrong. He tries growing flowers, and one of them, a cactus, becomes sentient from absorbing his thoughts and starts loudly repeating all of Stephen's private frustrations and insecurities in front of the gems. It's embarrassing and painful because the things the cactus says are things Stephen has been thinking but would never say out loud. That he feels like the gems don't need him anymore. That he's scared of being alone. That he doesn't know what his life is for if he's not saving someone. He tries to channel his energy into creative work, using his ability to enter other people's dreams to direct a reboot of a show he likes for Peridot. But his dreams keep spiraling out of control, pulling in his deepest fears and traumas and projecting them for everyone to see. The dreams become nightmares. Peridot sees things Stephen has been hiding from everyone. And then comes the proposal. Stephen, feeling desperate and unmoored, asks Connie to marry him. Connie, who is 16 and focused on her studies and her future, says, "Not now. Not no. Just not now." But Stephen can't hear the difference. To him, the one person he thought he could always count on has rejected him, and the last pillar of his support structure crumbles. After the proposal, Stephen's body starts physically rebelling. He turns pink constantly. He swells up. His strength becomes uncontrollable, and he goes to see a doctor for what might be the first time in his life. The episode Growing Pains is one of the most important episodes in the entire franchise. Stephen visits Dr. Priyanka Maheswaran, Connie's mother, who is both a doctor and someone who knows about Stephen's unusual physiology. She runs tests, she takes x-rays, or tries to. His gem shows up, but his body is hard to read. She asks him about his medical history. And then Stephen starts talking about his life, casually, like it's normal. He mentions being trapped in a bubble at the bottom of the ocean. He mentions being kidnapped by homeworld gems. He mentions falling from great heights. He mentions being trapped in space. He mentions being put on trial for a murder he didn't commit. He mentions watching friends die and bringing them back to life. He mentions all of it in this matter-of-fact tone, like he's describing a perfectly ordinary childhood. Because for him, it was ordinary. This was his life. This was normal. Dr. Maheswaran listens to all of this, and then she explains something that Stephen has never heard before. She tells him about adverse childhood experiences. ACS. It's an actual medical and psychological concept that describes how traumatic events during childhood can have lasting effects on a person's development, their health, their relationships, and their ability to handle stress. She explains that Stephen's body has been through so many life-threatening situations at such a young age that it has essentially rewired itself to treat all stress as life-threatening. His nervous system is stuck in fight or flight mode. Every minor stressor, every emotional hiccup, every uncomfortable conversation is being processed by his body as a mortal threat, and his gem powers are responding accordingly. In other words, Stephen has PTSD. He's had it for years, and his hybrid physiology means it manifests not just as anxiety and emotional dysregulation, but as actual physical dangerous power surges. His body is a weapon he can't turn off. This explanation sends Stephen into a panic attack right there in the doctor's office. His body starts swelling. Pink energy crackles around him. Dr. Maheswaran has to step back, and Greg, who has been listening outside, rushes in to calm his son down. It's a raw, painful scene, and it's a turning point, because for the first time Stephen's problem has a name. It's not a villain, it's not a monster, it's trauma. But naming it doesn't fix it, and Stephen characteristically doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to be the person who needs help. He's the person who gives help. That's his identity. That's who Steven Universe is. He's the kid who talks to his enemies, who empathizes with everyone, who always finds the kind solution. Admitting that he's the one who's broken feels like admitting that everything he's built his life around was a lie. The back half of Future is genuinely difficult to watch, in the way that watching someone you care about self-destruct is difficult. Steven becomes increasingly volatile. He lashes out. He pushes people away. He makes impulsive, destructive decisions. In the episode Mr. Universe, Steven learns about his father's past. Greg grew up in a strict, controlled household and ran away from home to become a musician. Steven becomes furious, not because Greg ran away, but because Greg then raised Steven without any structure at all. No school, no doctor visits, no normal childhood experiences. Steven realizes that he never had a normal life, not because of the gem stuff, but because even his human parent didn't give him one. He gets into a car accident that wrecks Greg's van and could have killed Greg. He doesn't apologize. He's too deep in his own pain to see beyond it. In the episode Fragments, Steven runs away from the crystal gems when they try to confront him about his behavior. He goes to Jasper, the one person who won't try to talk about feelings, and asks her to train him. Jasper obliges. She pushes Steven to fight harder, to embrace his diamond power, to stop holding back. And Steven does. He fights Jasper with increasing brutality, and in the climactic moment, he shatters her. He shatters Jasper. The same way Rose Quartz allegedly shattered Pink Diamond. Steven, the kid who spent 5 seasons finding peaceful solutions, who refused to hurt anyone, who talked a doomsday weapon into calming down, shatters another gem in a moment of uncontrolled rage. He immediately breaks down. He's horrified by what he's done. And in a moment of desperate grief, he uses his healing powers to bring Jasper back, resurrecting her the way he resurrected Lars. Jasper reforms and she's fine, physically, but Steven isn't fine. He just did the thing he was most afraid of. He became his mother. He became the monster that Pink Diamond was. The climax of Steven Universe Future is the episode I Am My Monster. Steven's trauma has accumulated to a breaking point. All the pain, the guilt over his mother's lies, the pressure of being everyone's savior, the grief of watching his friends move on, the horror of shattering Jasper, all of it converges, and Steven's body does what it's been trying to do for the entire series. It corrupts. Steven transforms into a massive kaiju-sized pink creature. A corrupted monster, just like the hundreds of gems who were corrupted by the Diamond's attack at the end of the war. Except Steven's corruption isn't caused by an external weapon. It's caused by his own unprocessed trauma. His body, pushed past every possible limit, finally breaks. The corrupted Steven is enormous and terrifying. He rampages through Beach City. The crystal gems, the diamonds, Connie, Greg, everyone who has ever loved Steven rushes to the scene, and for a moment, it looks like there's going to be a fight. Like someone is going to have to defeat him. But that's not what happens. Instead, they love him. The crystal gems don't fight Steven. They approach him with compassion. Connie climbs up his massive corrupted body and speaks to him. She tells him it's okay. She tells him he doesn't have to be strong right now. She tells him he can let go. The diamonds use their combined powers to stabilize him, the same way they healed the corrupted gems at Rose's fountain. And one by one, the people Steven has helped over the course of the entire series come forward. Lapis, Peridot, Bismuth, Lars, Sadie, the residents of Beach City, even Jasper. They all come and they all just hold him. They surround this enormous, monstrous, corrupted version of Steven with nothing but love and presence, and slowly, gently, Steven decorrupts. He shrinks back down to his human form. He's lying on the beach, 16 years old, sobbing, surrounded by everyone who has ever cared about him. And for the first time in the entire series, Steven lets himself be the one who is held. It's one of the most emotionally powerful moments in animation history. And the reason it works so well is because the show earned it. Every relationship, every bond, every act of kindness Steven performed over 5 seasons, a movie, and 20 episodes of Future, all of it pays off in this single moment. Steven spent his whole life taking care of others. And now, when he finally collapses under the weight of everything he's been carrying, they take care of him. The finale episode is called The Future. It takes place sometime after Steven's corruption and breakdown. Steven is doing better. Not perfect, but better. He reveals to the crystal gems that he's been seeing a therapist. He's been working through his trauma with a professional. Someone who can help him process what he's been through in a healthy way, and he's made a decision. He's leaving Beach City. Not forever, but for now. He needs to go. He needs to travel, to see the world as just Steven, not as a crystal gem, not as Pink Diamond's son, not as everyone's savior. He needs to figure out who he is when he's not defined by the people around him and the crises he solves. The final episode is a long goodbye. Steven visits everyone. He talks to Garnet, who tells him she's proud of him. He talks to Amethyst, who teases him and then hugs him. He talks to Pearl, who cries but smiles. He says goodbye to his dad, who is supportive and loving and tells Steven to take care of himself. He talks to Connie, who he's still with. They're going to do long distance. She's got her own path, and he's got his. They'll figure it out. Steven gets in his car, a car covered in stickers from his friends and the places he's been. He drives away from Beach City, past the temple, past the beach, past everything he's ever known. The camera pulls back, the road stretches out ahead of him, and the show ends. No final battle, no ultimate villain, no world saving, just a kid getting in a car and driving toward whatever comes next, toward therapy, toward self-discovery, toward a future that's entirely his own. I think what makes Future so special and what makes that ending so perfect is that it doesn't give you a triumphant conclusion. The final enemy isn't a diamond or a corrupted monster or an intergalactic threat. The final enemy is Steven's own unprocessed pain. And the solution isn't a magic shield or a healing power or a heroic sacrifice. The solution is therapy and love and learning to ask for help. For a children's show to end on that note, to tell its young audience that it's okay to not be okay, that it's brave to seek help, that your pain is valid even when you're supposed to be the strong one. That's something genuinely remarkable. And that's really where the story of Steven Universe wraps up. Not with a bang, but with a kid getting in a car and driving toward whatever comes next. But we still have some time together tonight. And there's so much about the world of Steven Universe that we touched on but didn't fully explore. The lore, the characters, the concepts that make this show so rich and rewatchable. So let's settle in for a while longer and talk about some of the things that make this universe feel so alive. Let's start with fusion, because it's one of the most celebrated and meaningful concepts in the entire series. Fusion, at its most basic level, is when two or more gems combine their physical forms and their identities into a single new being. The fused being has a new name, a new appearance, new abilities, and often a distinct personality that combines elements of the component gems but is also uniquely their own. Fusion requires all participants to be in emotional sync, usually through a dance, and the resulting fusion lasts as long as all participants remain in harmony. On Homeworld, fusion was viewed purely as a tactical tool. Two Ruby soldiers fusing to become a bigger, stronger Ruby was considered acceptable because they were the same type of gem. But fusion between different types of gems, cross-gem fusion, was considered an abomination. It was forbidden. It was seen as perverse, as a violation of the natural order that the diamonds had established. The idea that two different gems could merge into someone entirely new was threatening to a society built on rigid categories and assigned roles. What makes fusion so special in Steven Universe is what it represents metaphorically. Rebecca Sugar has been open about the fact that fusion is a metaphor for relationships. All kinds of relationships, romantic love, friendship, trust, codependency, abuse, all of it can be explored through the lens of fusion. Garnet is the purest example. Garnet is a fusion of Ruby and Sapphire, two gems who love each other so deeply and so completely that they choose to exist as one person. Garnet isn't just Ruby and Sapphire combined. She's someone new, someone who only exists because of their love. When Garnet speaks, she sometimes uses we instead of I, a subtle reminder that she's always two people choosing to be one. Her stability, her calm confidence, her wisdom, all of it comes from the foundation of a healthy, loving relationship. Garnet is, literally, what love looks like. Malachite, on the other hand, is a fusion of jasper and lapis lazuli, and she represents a toxic relationship. Lapis fused with jasper not out of love, but out of a desire for control. She wanted to trap jasper, to use fusion as a prison, and jasper was willing to be fused because she craved power. The resulting fusion, malachite, is unstable, angry, and dangerous. Both gems are miserable inside the fusion, each one trying to dominate the other. It's a chilling depiction of how two people can be locked together in a dynamic that hurts them both, held in place by rage and pain rather than love. Stevani is the fusion of Stephen and Connie, and they represent something equally beautiful but different from Garnet. Stevani is the fusion of two young people who trust each other completely. When Stephen and Connie fuse, they become a tall, confident, non-binary teenager who combines Stephen's empathy with Connie's intelligence and determination. Stevani experiences the world with a sense of wonder and capability that neither Stephen nor Connie has alone. The show uses Stevani to explore themes of growing up, of identity, of being seen and accepted for who you really are. There are other fusions throughout the series that are equally meaningful. Opal, the fusion of amethyst and pearl, is graceful and powerful but unstable because amethyst and pearl struggle to get along. Sugalate, the fusion of amethyst and garnet, is enormously strong but reckless because amethyst's wild energy amplified by garnet's power leads to a loss of control. Sardonyx, the fusion of pearl and garnet, is theatrical and precise but can become self-serving if pearl fuses with garnet for the wrong reasons, which actually happens in a gut-wrenching arc where Pearl manipulates Garnet into fusing just so she can feel strong again. Alexandrite is the fusion of all three crystal gems, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl. And she's massive and powerful but difficult to maintain because the three of them have such different personalities. And then there's Rainbow Quartz 2.0, the fusion of Stephen and Pearl, and Smoky Quartz, the fusion of Stephen and Amethyst, and Sunstone, the fusion of Stephen and Garnet, each one reflecting a different kind of relationship and a different combination of strengths. Fusion in Steven Universe isn't just a power-up, it's a relationship made visible. It's the show's way of saying that who you are with someone matters as much as who you are alone. Now let's talk about the humans of Beach City, because they deserve some love too. Beach City is a small fictional coastal town somewhere on the eastern seaboard of the United States, based visually on the Delaware beaches that Rebecca Sugar visited growing up. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the boardwalk is the center of social life, and where the arrival of a giant alien spaceship barely rates a mention in the local paper after a while. The residents of Beach City have learned to live alongside magic and aliens with a remarkable amount of calmness, which is either a testament to their resilience or a commentary on the human ability to normalize absolutely anything. There's Greg Universe, Steven's dad, who we've talked about a lot already. Greg is one of the show's most quietly wonderful characters. He's a former aspiring rock musician who now runs a car wash. He lived in his van for years. He's not conventionally successful by any measure, but he loves his son with a depth and sincerity that anchors the entire series. Greg is the one who grounds Stephen in his humanity. The crystal gems can teach Stephen about gem powers and ancient history, but Greg teaches him about music, about honesty, about being a good person. There's a running joke in the series that Greg lives in his van, but the show also makes clear that he chooses simplicity because he values experiences over possessions. In one of the later seasons, Greg actually becomes a multimillionaire after receiving a $10 million royalty check for a song his old manager Marty used in a commercial. And he spends it freely and generously, taking Stephen and Pearl on a lavish trip to Empire City because he honestly has no idea what to do with that kind of money. There's Connie Maheswaran, who deserves to be recognized as one of the best written love interests in animated television. Connie starts the series as a lonely, bookish girl with overprotective parents who has never had a real friend. Meeting Steven changes her life, and not just because of the magical stuff. Steven sees her for who she is and thinks she's amazing just as she is. Over the course of the series, Connie trains with Pearl to become a skilled sword fighter. She becomes Steven's partner in battle and in life. She's brave, smart, principled, and she's the one who, in future, has the maturity to say not now to Steven's proposal, not because she doesn't love him, but because she knows they both need to grow as individuals first. Their relationship is one of the show's most honest and healthy depictions of young love. Lars Barriga goes through one of the most dramatic character transformations in the series. He starts as a grumpy, insecure teenager who works at the Big Donut and is deeply concerned with what other people think of him. He's not likable at first, and that's intentional. But over the course of the series, Lars is forced to confront his own fear and insecurity, and he grows into a genuinely brave person. His death and resurrection on Homeworld are a turning point for his character. Pink Lars, as he's sometimes called, becomes the captain of a spaceship, leading the off-colors across the galaxy. He goes from being the most cowardly person in Beach City to one of the most courageous. In June 2025, it was actually announced that a spin-off titled Lars of the Stars is in development for Amazon Prime Video, which is exciting. Lars' story apparently isn't done yet. Sadie Miller is Lars' counterpart at the Big Donut, and for a while his love interest. Sadie is patient, kind, and long-suffering, often putting up with Lars' bad behavior because she cares about him. But one of the things the show does really well is eventually letting Sadie grow beyond that dynamic. She stops waiting for Lars. She forms a band. She starts a new relationship with someone named Shep. She finds her own identity outside of being the girl who likes Lars. It's a quiet revolution, and it mirrors the show's larger themes about growing up and finding your own path. The Beach City supporting cast is deep and lovingly drawn. There's the Pizzas, a family who runs the local pizza shop and has been in Beach City for generations. There's the Frymans, who run the fry shop on the boardwalk. There's Mayor Dewey, a well-meaning but somewhat bumbling politician who eventually loses his position. There's Ronaldo, a conspiracy theorist blogger who is both annoying and oddly perceptive. And there's Onion, a small, silent, slightly unsettling child who may or may not be human. The show never confirms this. What I appreciate about the Beach City humans is that they're not just background characters. They have their own arcs, their own growth, their own relationships. The show treats them as real people, not just set dressing for the gem storylines. And their gradual acceptance of the gems and the weirdness of their town is one of the show's warmest threads. Let's talk about the music for a moment, because Steven Universe might have the best original soundtrack of any animated series. The show's score was composed by Ivy Tran and Steven Sureshu Valema, credited as Ivy and Sureshu. Their music blends chiptune electronic sounds with piano, strings, and ambient textures to create something that feels both futuristic and deeply emotional. The Crystal Gems Temple has its own musical motif. Each character has recurring themes. The Homeworld gems have a distinctly different sonic palette from the Earth scenes. The music does an enormous amount of heavy lifting in terms of emotional storytelling, often telling you how to feel before a single word is spoken. Rebecca Sugar wrote many of the show's songs herself, and they're remarkable. Stronger Than You, sung by Estelle, as Garnet during a fight scene in the first season, became a viral hit and is widely considered one of the best songs in animation history. It's a love song disguised as a battle anthem, and it's Garnet singing about the power of Ruby and Sapphire's love. It's Over, Isn't It?, sung by Pearl in the episode Mr. Greg, is a devastating ballad about losing the person you love to someone else, and it's performed as a cabaret number on a hotel balcony. Love Like You, the show's end credits theme, was written by Sugar over the course of the entire series, with lyrics added gradually as the show evolved. It's a song about feeling unworthy of someone's love and slowly learning to believe you deserve it. Here Comes a Thought, sung by Garnet and Stevoni, is a song about mindfulness and managing anxiety. Both of you. From the episode Mr. Greg is a song where Steven asks Pearl and Greg to move past their shared grief over Rose and find a way to coexist. True Kinda Love from the movie is a celebration of authentic love. Other Friends, Spinell's villain introduction song, is a jazz-influenced number that's both catchy and deeply menacing. The music of Steven Universe isn't just good, it's essential. It carries emotional weight that dialogue alone can't, and it's a testament to Rebecca Sugar's background as a songwriter and musician that the show's music is as integral to the experience as the animation and writing. Now, I want to spend a little time talking about the cultural impact of Steven Universe, because it's significant. Steven Universe was one of the first mainstream American animated children's shows to feature LGBTQ plus characters and relationships prominently and positively. Ruby and Sapphire's romantic relationship was central to the show from early on, and their wedding in season 5 was a watershed moment for representation in children's media. Rebecca Sugar, who identifies as bisexual and non-binary, fought hard for this representation against network resistance. When the show was distributed internationally, some markets censored the LGBTQ content. In certain countries, Ruby was recharacterized as male, transforming the same-sex relationship into a heterosexual one. Sugar was open about her frustration with this censorship and used her platform to advocate for more inclusive storytelling and animation. Beyond LGBTQ representation, Steven Universe explored themes of consent, healthy relationships, toxic relationships, trauma recovery, body autonomy, and identity in ways that were groundbreaking for a children's cartoon. The show taught its audience that it's okay to be different, that strength comes from vulnerability, that asking for help is brave, and that the people who hurt you were often hurting too. These aren't lessons that most adult shows handle with this much nuance, let alone shows aimed at children. The show also had a significant impact on the animation industry itself. It helped pave the way for other cartoon shows to explore complex emotional themes and include diverse representation. Shows like She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, The Owl House, and Kipo, and The Age of Wonder Beasts all exist in a landscape that Steven Universe helped create. Rebecca Sugar's willingness to push boundaries, even at the cost of the show's continuation, inspired a generation of creators to demand more from children's programming. Speaking of Rebecca Sugar, let me share a few more details about the production of the series, because the behind-the-scenes story is almost as compelling as the show itself. Sugar was informed in 2016 that Steven Universe would be cancelled at the end of its 5th season. This was a devastating blow, because the show's story was far from finished. She negotiated with Cartoon Network to extend the 5th season to 32 episodes, giving her room to reach the Change Your Mind finale and wrap up the main storyline. She also secured a television film, which became Steven Universe the movie. Cartoon Network then told Sugar that there was no point producing a movie if it wasn't promoting an ongoing show, which led to the green light for Steven Universe Future, the 20-episode epilogue series. The series was produced using a storyboard-driven approach rather than traditional scripts. Writers created episode outlines, and then teams of storyboard artists drew the scenes and wrote the dialogue. This gave the show a distinctive visual storytelling quality and allowed for a lot of creative collaboration. The animation was handled by South Korean studios Sunmin Image Pictures and Rough Draft Korea. The show received critical acclaim throughout its run. It was praised for its storytelling, character development, visual design, and its willingness to tackle mature themes in an age-appropriate way. It won a Glade Media Award for Outstanding Kids and Family Programming and was nominated for numerous Annie Awards and Emmy Awards. If you're curious about which episodes are considered the standout moments, I'll mention a few that consistently come up in conversations about the best of the series. Jailbreak is the season 1 finale, where Garnet fights Jasper while singing Stronger Than You. And it's the moment where many fans say they realized the show was something special. Rose's scabbard is an early deep dive into Pearl's grief and love for Rose that is devastatingly emotional. Mr. Greg is a musical episode where Stephen takes Pearl and Greg to a fancy hotel to try to heal the rift between them, and it contains some of the best songs in the series, including It's Over, Isn't It? The answer is Garnet telling Stephen the story of how Ruby and Sapphire met, and it's animated in a completely different style, like a fairy tale picture book. Mindful Education uses Stevani to explore anxiety and trauma in a way that's both visually stunning and psychologically honest. And of course, A Single Pale Rose is the pink diamond reveal that recontextualizes the entire series. One of the things that makes Steven Universe special, and also one of the things that has sparked the most debate among fans, is its approach to redemption. The show operates on the belief that almost everyone can change, and that understanding the reasons behind someone's behavior is the first step toward helping them grow. This applies to small-scale conflicts, like Peridot, learning that Earth is worth protecting, and to enormous cosmic scale ones like the Diamonds dismantling their empire. The Diamonds' redemption, in particular, has been a point of contention. Some viewers feel that the Diamonds, who were essentially intergalactic dictators responsible for the corruption of hundreds of gems, the colonization and destruction of entire planets, and the enforcement of a rigid caste system for thousands of years, were redeemed too quickly and too easily. The argument is that a few conversations with a teenager shouldn't be enough to undo millennia of tyranny. And honestly, that's a fair criticism. The show was working under significant time constraints, especially after Rebecca Sugar learned the series was being cancelled. The Diamond's change of heart happens in the span of a few episodes, which doesn't give the audience enough time to process or believe in the transformation. In an ideal world, the Diamond's redemption would have been spread across an entire additional season, giving each Diamond a longer, more nuanced journey toward genuine change. But I also think the show is making a deliberate thematic choice here. Steven Universe isn't trying to say that the Diamonds deserve forgiveness. It's trying to say that change is possible, that even the most powerful, most entrenched, most harmful systems and people can be moved if someone is willing to reach out and show them another way. It's not about forgiving the unforgivable. It's about believing that the future can be different from the past. That's a fundamentally optimistic worldview, and it's one that the show commits to fully, even when it strains credibility. The show is also honest about the fact that redemption doesn't erase the past. In Steven Universe Future, we see that the Diamond's efforts to change haven't fixed everything. Gems who were oppressed under the old system are still dealing with the consequences. Steven himself is still suffering from trauma caused by the Diamond's actions. The wounds are healing, but they're not gone, and some of them may never fully close. The scars that the healed, corrupted gems carry on their bodies are a visual reminder of this. You can be restored, you can be whole again, but you'll always carry the marks of what happened to you. I think the show handles this tension between optimism and realism better than it's sometimes given credit for. It's not naive, it knows the cost, but it also refuses to give up on people, even people who have done terrible things. And in a world that often feels like it's running out of grace, I find that genuinely moving. Let me share a few more lore details that I think are worth knowing, just because they make the world feel richer. The Crystal Gems Temple in Beach City is actually a fusion statue. If you look at the exterior, it's a massive stone figure with multiple arms, and it represents the fusion of the original crystal gems. Inside the temple, each gem has their own room that reflects their personality. Garnet's room is full of lava and interconnected pools. Amethyst's room is a chaotic mess of collected objects. Pearl's room, by the time of the series, all the warp pads except the homeworld warp have been deactivated, cutting Earth off from the rest of gem civilization. This isolation is part of why the crystal gems were able to live undisturbed for 5,000 years. The Strawberry Battlefield is a former gem war battleground that's now covered in strawberry plants. The berries grow so abundantly because the soil was enriched by the remnants of gems who were shattered during the fighting. It's one of the show's most haunting visual metaphors: beautiful fruit growing from a mass grave. Rose's fountain is a healing spring created by Rose Quartz, where her healing tears flow. It's where Stephen and the diamonds eventually heal the corrupted gems. The fountain is surrounded by thorny vines that Rose's plant powers created, and it's hidden deep in a jungle-like area that has grown wild over the centuries. Lion, Stephen's magical pink lion, deserves a bit more attention. Lion was originally a normal lion that Rose Quartz brought back from the dead using her healing powers, similar to how Stephen later revived Lars. The resurrection turned Lion pink and gave him magical abilities, including the ability to create portals, walk on water, and store objects in a pocket dimension inside his mane. Lion's mane is connected to Lars's hair after Lars's resurrection, which means Stephen can travel between the two portals. Lion doesn't speak and mostly does whatever he wants, but he's fiercely protective of Stephen and has a habit of showing up exactly when he's needed most. He's also, despite being magical and immortal, still very much a cat. He naps constantly, ignores Stephen's instructions, and sits on things he shouldn't sit on. The off-colors are a group of gems who were considered defective by homeworld standards, and have been hiding underground to avoid being shattered. They include rhodonite, a permanent fusion of a ruby and a pearl who are in a romantic relationship; Padparadscha, a sapphire who can only predict events that have already happened, which makes her functionally useless as a fortune teller but endlessly endearing; the Rudel twins, a gem who emerged conjoined with two heads sharing one body; and Fluorite, a fusion of 6 different gems who speaks very slowly because all 6 components need to agree on what to say. The off-colors represent the show's theme that there's no such thing as a defective person. Their differences, the things homeworld considered flaws, are what make them interesting and valuable. Let me spend a little more time on the diamonds themselves, because each of them is a fascinating character in their own right, and their individual journeys through the series are worth exploring. White Diamond is the most ancient and the most terrifying. For most of the series, she's barely mentioned. She's this looming absent presence, the head of the Diamond Authority, who is so far above everyone else that even the other diamonds rarely interact with her directly. When she finally appears in Change Your Mind, she's enormous, glowing, and speaks with this eerie calm that makes your skin crawl. She refers to the other diamonds as extensions of herself, colors that she emanates. Blue is her patience, yellow is her strength, and pink was her charm. In White's mind, individuality doesn't exist. There's only her and everything else is a reflection. Her power is the most invasive of any diamond. She can overwrite other gems' minds, turning them into colorless puppets that speak in her voice and carry out her will. When she takes control of Blue and Yellow Diamond during the climax of Change Your Mind, they become ghostly white versions of themselves, their personalities stripped away. It's genuinely horrifying, and it puts into context just how oppressive gem society was under her rule. White Diamond didn't just govern through authority, she governed through erasure. If you weren't perfect, if you deviated from your assigned role, she could simply remove you as a person and replace you with a compliant shell. What makes White Diamond's redemption compelling, even though it happens very quickly, is that her flaw is the most human of all the diamonds. She's afraid. She's afraid that if she isn't perfect, she's nothing. She's spent thousands of years maintaining an image of absolute control because the alternative. Admitting that she's flawed, admitting that she doesn't have all the answers, is too terrifying to contemplate. When Stephen forces her to confront that fear, when she blushes pink and realizes she's not perfect, you can see it crack her open. It doesn't excuse anything she's done, but it explains it. Yellow Diamond's journey is different. Yellow is the military leader, the pragmatist, the one who gets things done. She's cold, efficient, and dismissive of anything she considers weakness. Her relationship with Pink Diamond was particularly strained because Pink's emotional outbursts and her desire to play rather than work drove Yellow crazy. When Pink was shattered, Yellow channeled her grief into anger and destruction. She wanted to obliterate every trace of the rebellion, every reminder of what happened. The cluster, the geo-weapon buried in Earth's core, was her project. If she couldn't have the colony, nobody would. But underneath all that armor, Yellow is grieving. One of the show's most powerful scenes is in the episode That Will Be All, where Yellow Diamond sings a song called What's the Use of Feeling Blue to Blue Diamond. On the surface, it's Yellow telling Blue to stop crying and move on. But if you listen carefully, Yellow is singing to herself. She's the one who can't move on. She's the one who's buried her feelings so deep that they come out as rage. When Yellow finally learns the truth about Pink, when she realizes that her baby sister chose to leave rather than stay with them, the look on her face is devastating. It's not anger. It's hurt. Pure, raw hurt. Blue Diamond is the emotional heart of the Diamond Authority, which is both her strength and her curse. Blue's power is the ability to project her emotions onto others, forcing them to feel what she feels. When she's grieving, everyone around her grieves too, whether they want to or not. She spent 5,000 years mourning Pink Diamond, visiting the palanquin where Pink was shattered, maintaining the human zoo as a memorial, and weeping. She's the diamond most visibly affected by loss, and her grief is so deep and so consuming that it becomes a form of control. You literally cannot be in her presence without drowning in her sadness, but Blue is also the diamond who changes the most meaningfully. After learning the truth about Pink, Blue's grief transforms into something constructive. In Era 3, she uses her empathic abilities to help gems process their emotions, turning a power that was once weaponized into a tool for healing. There's something beautiful about that. The diamond whose power was defined by overwhelming sadness, learning to use that same power to help others understand and work through their own feelings. The human zoo is one of the more unsettling locations in Steven Universe lore. Created by Blue Diamond as a gift for Pink Diamond during the colonization of Earth, it's a space station where a small population of humans has been kept in captivity for thousands of years. The humans inside the zoo live in an artificial paradise. They're healthy, they're fed, they're comfortable. But they have no free will. Their lives are regulated by a system called the Choosening, which determines who pairs up with whom. They don't make decisions, they don't experience hardship, they don't grow. There is everything else. Their body, their clothing, their hair is a hard light projection generated by the gemstone. This projection can be altered through shape-shifting, though maintaining a form that's drastically different from a gem's default is difficult and tiring. When a gem's physical form is destroyed, which the show calls poofing, the gem retreats into their gemstone to regenerate. Regeneration can take hours, days, or longer. And when a gem reforms, they can choose a new appearance. A gem's gemstone can be damaged. If it's cracked, the gem's form glitches and their abilities are compromised. Lapis Lazula's cracked gem caused her to be unable to fly or control water properly. If a gemstone is completely shattered, the gem is effectively killed. The fragments retain some consciousness, but it's splintered and incoherent. Homeworld experimented with forcing shattered fragments together to create what are called cluster gems, forced fusions that are tortured, confused, and in constant pain. The large cluster buried in Earth's core is the ultimate expression of this cruelty. Thousands of shattered fragments forced into one massive fusion. Gem weapons are another interesting detail. Most gems can summon a personal weapon from their gemstone, a unique weapon that reflects their type and personality. Pearl's weapon is a spear. Amethyst's is a whip. Garnet's are gauntlets. Rose Quartz's was a shield, which Steven inherited. Not all gems have weapons, though. Lapis Lazuli, for instance, doesn't summon a weapon but instead has incredibly powerful hydrokinesis, the ability to control water. Peridot, as an Era 2 gem, was made without the ability to summon a weapon, but she later discovers she has ferrokinesis, the ability to control metal, which is a unique ability she develops on her own. Each diamond has unique powers that reflect their role. White diamond controls minds. Yellow diamond can destabilize and disrupt gem forms with her energy. Blue diamond projects overwhelming emotions. And pink diamond had power over organic life, healing, plant control, and the ability to bring things back from the dead, as we see with Lion and Lars. Steven inherited all of Pink's abilities, plus some new ones that are uniquely his, like the ability to enter dreams and possess other people's bodies temporarily. I love the small world building details in Steven Universe. The fact that gems don't need to eat or sleep but can choose to if they want. The fact that Amethyst eats constantly just because she enjoys it. The fact that gems can store objects inside their gemstones in a sort of pocket dimension. The fact that the gem language exists as a full writing system that appears on temples and structures throughout the show. The fact that Cookie Cat, Steven's favorite ice cream, is a cat-shaped ice cream sandwich filled with half vanilla and half strawberry, which fans have pointed out mirrors Steven's own dual nature as half human and half gem, small things. But they add up to a world that feels real and lived in and loved. There are a few more things I want to mention that I think add to the richness of this world. The warp pads, for instance. These are circular platforms scattered across the Earth and presumably across the galaxy that allow gems to travel instantly between locations. They activate with a column of blue light, and the sensation of warping is described as weightless and disorienting. The crystal gems use them constantly to travel between the temple and various gem locations on Earth, like the kindergartens, the Sky Arena, and ancient battlegrounds. There's a central hub called the Galaxy Warp that used to connect Earth to the rest of Gem civilization, but all the off-planet warp pads were deactivated after the war, leaving Earth isolated. The corrupted gem monsters that Steven and the Crystal Gems fight throughout the early series are also worth pausing on. Each one of those monsters used to be a person. Some were Crystal Gems who fought for Earth. Some were homeworld soldiers who got left behind. Some were just ordinary gems who happened to be on the planet when the corrupting light hit. Every time Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl fight a corrupted gem and bubble it, they're fighting someone they might have known, someone they might have fought alongside. The show usually doesn't draw attention to it directly, but it's there if you think about it, and it gives every early Monster of the Week episode a layer of quiet tragedy. There's also the concept of gem shards and what happens to gems after they're shattered. Shattered gems aren't truly dead. Their consciousness is fragmented across the pieces, which means the shards retain some awareness but can't think coherently. When shards try to reform, they produce partial, nightmarish shapes. A hand here, a foot there, reaching and grasping without purpose. Homeworld exploited this by forcing shards of different gems together to create cluster gems, artificial fusions that are in constant agony. The scene where Steven first discovers the cluster gems in the kindergarten, in the episode Keeping It Together, is one of the most disturbing in the series. Garnet, who is herself a fusion and therefore deeply understands the intimacy and consent that fusion requires, is so horrified by what she sees that she nearly falls apart. It's details like these that separate Steven Universe from most other animated shows. Every concept, every piece of lore, every background detail is connected to the show's core themes. Fusion is about relationships. Corruption is about trauma. Shattering is about death and its aftermath. The kindergartens are about colonialism and extraction. The caste system is about prejudice and control. Nothing is just window dressing. Everything means something. And there's one more thing I want to mention before we wrap up. The show's central message, because it's something I come back to a lot. Steven Universe, at its core, is a show about empathy. It's about a kid who believes, genuinely and sometimes naively, that every person deserves to be understood. That every enemy has a reason for what they're doing. That every monster was once something else. And that the bravest thing you can do isn't fight, it's listen. Steven doesn't defeat most of his enemies by being stronger than them. He defeats them by being kinder. He talks to Peridot instead of fighting her. He heals the corrupted gems instead of shattering them. He reaches out to the diamonds instead of destroying them. He holds Spinel instead of punishing her. He even, in the end, extends that compassion to himself, which is the hardest thing of all. The show isn't naive about this. It doesn't pretend that empathy solves everything or that kindness is always easy. It shows the cost, it shows the frustration, it shows moments where Steven's approach fails, where people don't change, where the damage is too deep to fix with a conversation. But it also shows that trying is always worth it. That reaching out, even when it's scary, even when it might not work, is better than giving up. I think that's why Steven Universe has resonated so deeply with so many people. It's not just a good story with good characters and good music. It's a show that believes in us. It believes that we can be better than we are, that we can grow, that we can change, and that no matter how broken we feel, we're worth saving. And on that note, I think it's time to wind this one down. That's the entire story of Steven Universe. From the ancient gem empire to the rebellion, from Pink Diamond's lie to the corrupting light, from Steven's birth to his first mission, from the homeworld return to the Pink Diamond reveal, from the healing of the corrupted gems to Spinal's heartbreak, from Steven's breakdown to his quiet drive into the future. We covered a lot tonight, and honestly, there's still more we could talk about. The specific details of every fusion, the lore of the Diamond's Quartz, every corrupted gem and what they used to be, the full history of the Gem Wars battles, the intricacies of Homeworld's caste system, the philosophy behind each crystal gem's fighting style. There's so much depth in this world that we could do this again and still not cover everything. But that's for another night. If you enjoyed this, if it helped you relax, if the story carried you somewhere comfortable, then I'm glad. That's all I wanted tonight. Just to sit here with you in the quiet and tell you a story about a kid with a gem in his belly who believed the world was worth saving, and who, in the end, learned that he was worth saving too. So wherever you are right now, whether you're still awake or already drifting off, I hope you sleep well tonight. I hope you have good dreams. And I hope when you wake up tomorrow, you carry a little bit of what Steven Universe taught all of us. That you're allowed to grow, that you're allowed to change, that it's okay to ask for help, and that the people who love you are never as far away as you think. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the next one.